So yeah, we have to be careful on the source. Again, the great thing is always to observe, look around, and then when you feel like you have a real sense of it being one way or another, hold on to it, but don't be steadfastly fixative to it. Nothing in life is pure black and white, except the digital gin. Everything else is a bandwidth and cycles of grey. Peaks and troughs. Always remember that. What's reality today may be fantasy tomorrow. What's fantasy tomorrow may be reality today. It goes on and on. Always be open for new information. If evidence is presented to believe in things you don't believe in, and it's there, consider it. Consider it. I'm very suspicious of the whole alien thing for numerous levels. To me, there's always a purity in the initial engagement with something. Your first impressions of a person. A dream you had about a person that didn't seem what you'd previously thought about them before that manifested in them later on. A music you first heard that instantly I was listening to old Iron Maiden there, the original with Paul Di'Anio. I can remember when those two albums came out, and the songs like Purgatory and Sanctuary, it was like a punk rock metal, and those albums are fantastic to me. When I heard Iron Maiden post Paul Di'Anio with Bruce Dickinson, it just sounds like try-hard metal opera, show tunes. He even sings like a West End or a Broadway singer. The way he goes up in scales, come to the hills. It's like a Cats or something. But you hear the old stuff with Paul Di'Anio on albums like Killers. You hear the real Iron Maiden, the Iron Maiden that grabbed you, and that's because that was the initial truth that came. A band that had no money, nothing, on the road, just had a great plan to produce a certain kind of music, and got out there and did it. And I guarantee you, when the history of Iron Maiden is written, you will find more people preferring, in the end, the Paul Di'Anio Iron Maiden over the Bruce Dickinson Iron Maiden, because when you hear a boat, the initial stuff hits you at a deeper level. That's why it's so important. The first impressions of things are important. So when someone, I see how people are trapped into things like the flat earth and the mud flood. At first they go, what? I don't believe this. But then they'll be given, because they have a lack of knowledge into certain things, or have a small world view in the case of many of the flat earthers, they'll say one thing, explain how compasses in the southern hemisphere still point north. And then they'll go, I never knew that. And the reason why they point north is because the stone that's in them is magnetized by the northern hemisphere, not by the southern. It's nothing to do with the earth being flat. If you take the magnetic stone from the southern hemisphere, it will point south. It's just that most compasses are made in the northern hemisphere. It's like the thing, I get a lot of shit because I believe the moon landings happen. Why? Because I read that 14 times issue when it first came out in the 90s, and yeah, it blew my mind. I was like, what? This can't be real. Maybe they did fake the whole lunar thing, and then over the years, every question that was posed by Dad or posed by me was effectively answered to the point where, yeah, they went to the moon. They went to the moon. And things like that were actually, should I say, the doubts in my head were born out of my ignorance rather than being a fact. I didn't know enough. Like in the year, I didn't know enough about rocketry, and I would say things like, well, how if space is a vacuum, how do rockets propel forward if there's no air to push against? And then you realize, well, that's Newton's third law of motion, the equal and opposite reaction. If it's pushing to the inside chamber of the rocket, that is the force needed to propel the rocket through space. Little things like you learn it and you learn and you learn it, and eventually you realize that the doubts that you had were 99% ignorance. But then there are real mysteries as well. Of course, there are some flat earthers that are out that just no hope for them. They think that the ocean should fall off the bottom of the earth because they think that the atmosphere, the gravity is in the cosmos. This is why a lot of them end up with like. And I had one fella I've known for years. I've known him for years on Facebook, and I met him a couple of times for friends. A lovely fella. I got on great with him. And all I did was show him how his flat earth stuff was wrong. And he blocked me on Facebook for that reason. I mean, there was no need for that. I wasn't rude to him because I liked the guy. No one else was rude to him. He was just shown, no, you're wrong about that. He would say things like, if the space station is travelling at 18,000 miles an hour, how come I can't stick a cup of coffee outside my car window when I'm driving at 30? I said, because there's no atmosphere in space to push against your hand while you're holding the coffee. You're not feeling any motion. There's momentum. Momentum is not the same thing. Acceleration and momentum are not the same thing. And it was just like to see decent people do things like that, block you for something stupid like that. I don't understand it. I mean, I just keep asking questions. And the same thing with the UFO thing, the alien thing. I'm not, like I said, if the UFO was in the sky floating in front of me and there was people underneath holding cans of Coke saying, I want to teach the world to see, this whole thing. We are one. I'd be extremely skeptical. Because we've all known that was a thing as almost like space communism. Especially now, people so locked into their phones, people so locked into the scrying mirrors of their iPhones and their Androids non-stop. That's where they look all the time. They've already been trained by the digital jinn to become saturated into the matrix, the new matrix. And that makes people very susceptible. When I had my Facebook account cancelled last week, 2 weeks ago, I actually had a good laugh. I got loads of hobbies and things like that done. In fact, that's going to be my new resolution on Facebook. I'm not going to spend as much time on it as I did because I realised how much time I was wasting. So I was able to do like a hobby stuffs and do a few other things I needed doing that I've been putting off because people. That's another thing. I'm not going to be answering every message I'm ever sent in Facebook ever again. I've given away too much of myself that way over the years. I put out an enormous amount of stuff for free. Look at these Vons. Look at all the other stuff I do. Don't be asking personal service anymore. You're not going to get it. Nothing personal. It's just I've given enough. Search through the archive of stuff, and you will get it. I was just looking at some fashion show where that girl is wearing a skirt, and it says "fuck Trump" in gold letters. Hasn't got the basic understanding, the profane in action. What she's doing is powering Trump. What does fuck Trump mean? Well, fuck him. You have sex with him. So she's a sexy girl, and she has the Trump part between her crotch, rubs it, and it's written in gold, glamoury and charge. And that goes right into building his legend. The way you stop giving power to someone you hate, dislike, or want out of power is to ignore them. By giving them your attention, whether it's love or hate, you're charging their persona. When you charge their persona with your psychic energy, you're creating charisma. And that's why certain people have charisma in spades. Not because they developed it themselves directly, it's because other people have charged them like a car battery running down. You put a charger on it and it charges them. And it's the one thing that people just don't seem to get into their heads. Energy goes where attention flows, and then they spend all their time hating on a politician or hating on a celebrity, and all they're doing is feeding their charisma. Now it's not the same thing as criticizing their work, but when it's personal, when it's hatred, when it's slanderous, all you're doing is pouring your life energy into building the legend and the mystique of the individual. And it's the same thing with the aliens thing. Now, like with the Quran's on 333 thing, I say, don't be sitting there looking at your computer screen or your phone going, oh, the digital jinn is inside there. The digital jinn is there, they're getting me. Just be aware. Switch it off. Switch it off. Like I said, you can monitor psychic weather. 3 a.m. wherever you are, you'll switch it on and you will see that's when the animal torture videos are shown. That's when the videos of people having their heads chopped off. The reason is it's why it's 3 a.m. everywhere is because that's the part of the time on your where you are in the world that you're furthest from the magnetic influence of the sun as well as the sun's rays, and you're in total and absolute darkness. That's why it is the true witching hour. The magnetic fields are different and therefore it affects your brain. Your brain is affected and therefore the veil opens up and forces try to enter you. The people who show animal slaughter porn videos at that time or anything that's like that, what the entity is doing is harvesting life energy off people suddenly being shocked by these videos that this infected individual is doing. I know people that were once normal people that because of digital jinn infection are now gone. Their old personality is gone and will never come back. Never come back, because the digital jinn and its agency in the form of individuals who work on its behalf have sucked them into a lifestyle and a world and conditions that have completely destroyed them as a human being. And you see it all the time with the flat earthers and the mud flooder types. We saw it with the freemen of the land types. We saw them with that, didn't we? Oh, that with the freeman on the land thing was a classic example of the digital jinn in action. About, what was that, like 7, 8 years ago? I do not consent. Don't stand in, I do not recognize this court. Send receipts to... That was the greatest load, Black's law, the greatest load of bullshit. Common courts. I'm down to greatest load of bullshit. And the digital jinn got inside the weak, got inside the frightened, got inside the addicted, and had them destroy their lives, destroy their families, for a belief in something that ultimately, it's okay to look into it, it's okay to check it out, it's okay to see if there's something in it can work for you, but when you see there has not been one single freeman of the law of the land who has gotten away with it, who has not gone to prison, lost their families, lost their minds. And then they have these same people. I notice in every case these people will always have addiction problems. Chain smokers, potheads, alcoholics. In every case, that made them so easy for them to be sucked into the digital jinn. Oh, all your problems are over now. You just become a free man off the land and say, I do not consent. And when a policeman stops you in a car saying, I'm not driving a car, I'm travelling in my conveyance. The stupidity of all that stuff. Endless videos of them, some of them nearly getting killed while they're by cops while they're screaming, I do not consent. It doesn't work. None of them ever get away with it. I was also talking to my friend there in Cork the other day there about so many people who have been on this alternative media scene who have just vanished. They're just gone. They seem to have a big flash in the pan. People are sharing their videos, friending them on social media, telling them they're fantastic every 5 seconds. Then they get away with it for a while. They get a little bit of fame in alt media, and then you never hear about them ever again. Like the Seinfeld says, who are these people? Who are they? And there's so much of that over the years. I mean, I'm one of the few that's actually stood for the long term and still here. One of the very few. Many others have vanished, really vanished. Others have had big profiles in the past and are barely have anything now. And not by choice or anything like that. There's literally people got fed up listening to them. Others have imploded, but it always seems to be the ones who have a big bang, they arrive, and then they just fade away. They just fade away because everyone's looking for a solution. Everybody's looking for a solution. Be interesting to see. I think anyone who's lasted long in this, with the exception of someone who's like a massive megalomaniac, they deserve a lot of credit because all the shit you get from it. But they deserve that, for the survival in it. Because I don't know how people like David Icke have managed it. Really don't know how he managed it. The guy must be built of steel or something like that. But that's probably why he's got his reward in the end for all his years of sticking at it. He's and I know I'd made fun of the whole thing, like, damn it, sit there, reptile. I'm not talking about like him so much in that stuff. It's the kind of the mindless follower, damn it, sit there, reptile. And if someone came along tomorrow, they would believe exactly what they said. Those types who actually supported those ones who show up, appear, and vanish and never hear from them ever again. And again, there's no safety in this stuff. No safety at all. Because you don't know what the interface is. You sit there on your social media. You sit there on your YouTube and you watch a video about something that's like really intrigues you. Something controversial. Something about some conspiracy. Seems terribly exciting. The individual delivering it may even have the best of intentions and be perfectly honest and sincere in what they're saying. But the digital djinn is always, always the interface between you and them. You're not sitting there talking to a person, looking at them face to face. That's why events are so good. People can go there and talk to the person face to face and see what kind of person they are. You're a third party, just like in The Shining. A third party exists on the interface, on the Terminator. I always talk about the idea of the Terminator, that point between day and night. Well, it's the same thing with the internet. The Terminator exists between you as an interface, you and the information you're receiving as an interface. And emotions, how it affects you emotionally, is always the key to the presence of the digital djinn. I know that sounds cynical, but if you see something that's emotional, there was this woman I knew in Ireland here. She used to get all emotional when she'd see someone talking, making a speech about freemen of the land, or all emotional when someone like David Icke said something, and then now all emotional when, what was his name, Tommy Robinson was released from prison or whatever. That emotion is the tug of the digital djinn grabbing your energy. That's how they get you. They get you all emotional. Now, obviously, if you see something that's shocking, like I saw the other night from China, I'm not going to go into it, you cannot help it. You're a human being with feelings, and it's immediately stolen from you. But if you switch it off right away and immediately change your mind to something like listen to a music or watch what I do is I go to YouTube and I watch scenes from my favorite comedy movies like Caddyshack, Wayne's World, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and many other films that, Zoolander had me in stitches over the years, and that makes me forget the harvesting that was done by the digital djinn. Otherwise, the digital djinn fears one thing more than anything else: neutrality. Neutrality is to the digital djinn what being ignored is to a celebrity. It cuts off the power supply. When you approach information neutral and how it's presented with neutrality, you're able to objectively understand it Because then, rather than the digital djinn controlling the narrative between you and your cognition, what happens is the dialogue then begins between you and your subconscious mind. And what is the ultimate catalyst of your conscious mind and your subconscious mind when confronted with these concepts and ideas? Intuition. Intuition. The digital djinn wants your intuition shut down and your emotions and your reactions, your visceral reactions, put to the fore. Because when they're at the fore, the one thing that shuts off the conscious mind is the sensory overload. This is why it's used by cults to brainwash people, military interrogation, why they put people in containers and play death metal music at incredible volume for hours on end. Eventually the subconscious mind gives up and the conscious mind is left as an automaton, a flesh golem. And that's what the digital djinn is doing with the internet. It wants to do with the internet. Sensory overload. You look at these people like these SJWs, like the one I made fun of in the first hour, who shut down my account on Facebook, and what you all know what they look like. And the reason why they look the way they are, don't know who they are as people, are filled with anger, is because their subconscious minds have been switched off and replaced with reactionary feelings, reactionary thoughts. It's not the context, it's not the subtext, it's how it makes them feel. And if they have feelings that make them feel bad, that means it is bad. So for instance, it's like the Mary Poppins song, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. In their case, it's a spoonful of offensiveness and being triggered makes the medicine go away. What happens is they get sick. Their psyche gets sick because they're not confronting the truth. And the truth is the shadow. We all have it. No one is impervious to it. We all make mistakes with it. It rules us. It damages us. It liberates us. But it's there. It is there as the modifier in order to create a score sheet of our impulsions and our behavior when confronted with challenging situations. It becomes the arbiter of the solutions to escape that. And that's what a lot of these people who are like that, well, they all are like that. You saw that conference a while ago, the Socialist Workers of America, Communist Party of America, having the meeting where they're doing jazz hands, and it was ridiculous. Can we stop using gender language? Yes, the comrade, we have to do what he says. Can we not? Can we stop talking about the sky being blue? It's racist. The sky can be black. Yes, and you see what that leads to? Utter madness. And that was a fantastic learning video, because we saw the mind inside these people, and there is no mind in there. It's all about avoidance of feelings that might challenge them. And this eventually leads to gulags and mass graves. Have no doubt about this. Those purple-haired blobs on Facebook who are community standards people and people like that are the same ones in Pol Pot's world who executed men, women and innocent children, the same ones who are Bolsheviks in the NKVD killing rooms, because their feelings are being annoyed. The ultimate annoyance to their feelings is other human beings. How they solve that problem is by shutting them off on social media. But in reality, if that didn't exist, they would be putting a revolver to the back of their head and blowing their brains out over a lime pit. We saw it with the Stalin purges, the NKVD Trotskyite slaughters in Tartar. Tartar, of all places, the Tatars. We saw it with the Nazis and socialism, National Socialism, We saw it in Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. This is what happens when you let feelings be the arbiter of the human consciousness, and you lose wisdom. Because wisdom requires self-reflection. Instead of them looking in the mirror and saying, like I saw it this week, you see these women who are usually women, but there's men too, who are very, very overweight to the point, and young ones too, in their early 20s, and they'll say things like, "I'm not fat, it's body image in the mainstream is wrong." No, darling, you're not well. You cannot run to the shop. If your house was on fire, you wouldn't be able to run out fast enough. The skinny girl that you says has biased body image is the one who survives, not because the firemen think she's a sexy girl and want to save her. It's because she can get down the stairs and get out before the carbon monoxide suffocates her like it's going to suffocate you. Your feelings are dangerous in that regard. The Frankfurt School types, the cultural Marxists, are all encouraging this kind of carry on. They're all encouraging this kind of carry on because it makes people useless. Absolutely useless. And when you're useless, you're compliant. You're compliant because you're a frightened little man or nervous little woman. Never, ever allow them to make you frightened of things that are ephemeral, incorporeal, dogmatic, philosophical. Because they will do that, they will rob the song from your heart. Anxiety and fear is not the same thing.